Hello there and welcome to episode 11 of the Unqualified Opinions podcast. I'm your host, as always, Marco Yerkovich. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm joined, as always, by Will Byerman.
Now with 20% more ginger on the show, eh?
And speaking of the ginger, it's the return of the one, the only Tim Seipel.
Yep, I'm back again. I know.
All right. Well, on today's episode, we're going to be discussing major changes, potential changes to the NBA league calendar, our top 3 in NFL MVP voting right now, our NFL coaching hot seat, and much, much more. So let's get right into it with those potential changes to the NBA league calendar. So overall, Adam Silver and the Players Association are discussing a multitude of things: a play-in tournament for the playoffs, reseeding of the conference finalists, reduction of the total regular season schedule, and a potential 30-team in-season tournament. So your guys' thoughts on some of those proposals?
Yeah, I definitely think that these proposals are to make the regular season a little bit more exciting. I think that Adam Silver has come up with a good idea to try to make the regular season more watchable and maybe bring in more viewers, because right now viewing has been going down, and I definitely think a play-in tournament would be good, and just to bring more excitement. And I think the 30-team in-season tournament is also to kind of make the regular season games a little bit more important for the NBA teams, and to just add a little bit more urgency.
Right. Will, your thoughts on that?
First of all, my concern with this is I think one of the headliners is reducing the schedule to 78 games. That's 4 games. You're not really changing the schedule much at all.
Well, that's also to make room for the tournament. And it's also about the placement of the tournament. They were going to do it from early January to All-Star break, but there's a multitude of problems with that. One, competing with the NFL playoff games, and 2, that's still in the trade window, so you could have players switching allegiances mid-tournament. So they're going to do that Thanksgiving to Christmas, most likely.
What I'm trying to say, though, is the thing that all the players have been very vocal about asking for in the last couple seasons is they want 12 to 20 less games. And I think if you take 4 or 5 games out of the regular season and then just add in a big tournament,
well, that would be incorporated within the 78. And a lot of
it sounds exciting.
Okay, but only so many teams are going to make it that far in the tournament, though.
It sounds exciting to have a regular season tournament, though, but I don't see a huge point unless you can find a way that really ties into playoff berths. I don't think it's that effective. The only thing I really, really love, I'd love to see this tournament if it can be done well. I'm not sure, but again, I think what the players want most is fewer games. But the thing that excites me the most is Adam Silver discussed the possibility of taking the top 4 teams left over at the end of the playoffs, top 4 seeds, instead of doing conference finals, reseeding them and having them play that way. So I looked at an ESPN article today that talks about different outcomes we would have had, and it's just half the championships we've had, especially the Warriors Cavs one. If they did a 4-team reseeded tournament there, the Warriors and Cavs would have played in the semifinals every year. So it totally would have changed all of basketball playoffs for the last decade.
You're looking at a potential of this year, you could end up with the Lakers-Clippers final or something like that.
Right, and I love the innovation that Adam Silver has brought to the table. I think it's interesting to see that Adam Silver is not just, although the NBA has been successful, he doesn't frown away upon possible reforms to maybe even make the league a little bit better, and that's what I love in seeing Adam Silver, who's been the NBA has been pretty successful for the most part, and I think that this just adds a little to it.
Right, the NBA has been really progressive in their attitude towards adopting changes to the league. They've been really radical in the things that they've changed, being pro player and just overall trying to improve their product.
No, by far, though, most interesting thing is if you look at the last couple Cavs-Warriors finals, you could really argue the Warriors were playing the 3rd or 4th best team in the league. Instead of,
the Western Conference final at times was more interesting.
For a long time, we've had a situation where the East Conference team wasn't as strong. And so it would have been so much more cool to see a Rockets-Warriors final, for example. So I really think that I agree, conference should be less. They shouldn't really take conference playoffs into account as much. It should be just best teams overall.
Yeah, I think this is a step moving towards a step of something that I've really been championing for a long time, which is I think we should completely eradicate all divisions and conferences in NBA basketball.
I agree.
Travel is fine. It's the 21st century. Time zones are not an issue. Play everyone a set amount of times. and the best teams play the best teams, just the top 16 or top 12 in the playoffs.
The only reasonable
it's
argument,
so logical.
The only reasonable argument you can come up with that is just like, the only thing I'd add to that is I'd say set aside a couple extra games. So like a Celtics team will play like the Sixers or a rival like that more often.
Yeah, and while the rivalries are not as prominent as they would be in the NFL, those still exist and we should still respect them. But definitely that's probably moving towards, making the league a more even playing field, and that's the whole goal here.
We talk a lot about how uneven it is. We've talked about a lot recently about how the top of the league is so much better than even like the middle part of the league. Conference-wise, it's been even more big of a drop-off from there. The East has been barely competitive until pretty much last year. Definitely get rid of conferences.
Yeah, and so this is all tying into the bigger theme here, which is there's a new TV revenue deal coming up in the next few years for the NBA, and they have lost some of their bargaining power. While the NFL continues to struggle, their value has never been higher, but they are fearing a loss in revenue here. So this is why these changes need to occur. They're hoping to implement any of these or all of these by the 21-22 season, which will be the 75th anniversary of the NBA. So it'll be massive change overall for the league. And this all comes off the back of this is a 2-year span. That's the lowest total NBA viewership on television over a 2-year span since they started keeping track of it in the late 70s, since the league was on tape delay, right? So this is not great for the league TV-wise,
the NBA
revenue-wise.
Has arguably never been better than now, and they're really starting to catch. If you look at it, they're getting close to challenging the NFL in football just a little bit. People have been speculating,
right, but not in TV viewership where the revenue matters.
And probably comes down to the amount of games.
Right, this is the step they're taking.
Yeah. Why watch one regular season game when there's 81 more?
Right, exactly. So it's all about making it have more urgency, more importance, and I love this step, and I think we all do, that the league is taking to not only improve their product, but improve how it can be viewed by different people. So we're going to move on to our NFL MVP discussion for today. We're just going to do our top 3. We're just going to each go around and discuss it. I assume we'll have pretty similar guys on these lists. But Will, who do you have in your third spot?
I'm going to keep McCaffrey up there. I still think what he's doing is absolutely sensational as a receiver and a running back. I know his production's dipped a bit. The Panthers aren't as popular as they were because they've struggled of late. They're not really looking at a playoff berth right now, but I think McCaffrey's I was really hoping he'd be the MVP. I don't think he's really there, but I definitely think he's top 3.
All right, Tim, who do you have in the third slot?
So I highly doubt that anybody has this on their MVP race list, but right now I have Michael Thomas. He's come in with 104 catches, 1,242 receiving yards, and he's looking at possibly breaking the record of catches in a season. And I believe that record is currently at 150, and he is looking to break it, and he's well on pace. So he's had a sensational season, even with a backup quarterback at times. And then Drew Brees coming back is only going to help his stock even more.
I really like that pick, but in the third spot, I have to agree with Will. I've got McCaffrey, 1,100 rush yards and 12 TDs. Those both lead the NFL. Also 500 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Leads the league in total yards as well. And as he alluded to, the Panthers now fallen out of the playoffs, which means he probably won't get an MVP nod. Although we've only had one non-quarterback MVP this decade, so it wasn't going to happen anyway. But he definitely deserves to be in the discussion.
By the way, just to help out Tim here, the current record for most receptions in the season is 143 by Marvin Harrison in 2002.
So he's well on pace.
Thomas was actually 5th all time last year with 125 receptions.
So he's well on pace to breaking that record, barring some kind of injury or resting him at some point in the season. All right, so Will, who is your second in your MVP rankings?
It's Russell Wilson, especially because the Seahawks were a team that many people didn't think were going to do that well this year. The Rams obviously were really good. The Niners, people didn't think they'd be this good, but we knew there was potential for them to make some noise. And the Seahawks look pretty stagnant. Doug Baldwin's gone too. I don't think anyone really thought the Seahawks would be this dominant, and Russell Wilson's been a huge part of that.
All right, Tim, who do you have in the second spot?
So in the second spot, I currently have Lamar Jackson. For a couple reasons. Obviously, his 2,258 pass yards, his 19 passing touchdowns, with 16 of those coming inside the pocket. So he's really proven to be more of an in-pocket passer. and he's become even more accurate with a 66.8% completion percentage. And obviously his legs are just as dangerous with 781 rushing yards this season. But I think it's interesting to look at the difference between Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson. And when you look at the defenses faced, Lamar Jackson has just not faced the high caliber defenses or as high caliber defenses consistently as much as Russell Wilson. And that's to me why I have a difference between those two.
So in my second spot, I really wrestled with who to put second and who to put first. And this is all subject to change, obviously, but currently in second, I have Russell Wilson. As we alluded to, a tremendous talent. But overall, I mean, he just seems to really have his team going in the correct direction. He's 5th in total yards and 1st in touchdowns right now. And he's overall a really amazing talent, but I think we said that earlier. We didn't expect the Seahawks to be this good, whether it's his leadership or what he brings on the field. He's just been spectacular. Actually, going into last week, he had the highest touchdown to interception ratio of any quarterback to win an MVP up until week 12. So, that's a good sign for him. So no one else has done that before. So Will, who do you have in your first spot?
It was pretty tough. I believe in all three of the guys I had, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have the same list, Marco, because Lamar Jackson.
We have the exact same list.
Lamar Jackson is number one for me. I talk about this a lot, and Tim already did all the stats. Like he's having an amazing season, both running. But again, the big thing is he has proved, I hope to God he's finally proved that he's a quarterback, because the running back stuff was a fun little joke for a while. And it started as like a legitimate perception. Then it was a fun joke. But I mean, he's been an elite pocket quarterback, and he's leading a Ravens team that shouldn't be this competitive with a bunch of offensive pieces who aren't as good. Mark Ingram's kind of a little past his prime.
A team that regularly employs 3 tight end sets and makes it work and makes it really dangerous.
He's really, we're going to talk about some hot seat coaches later. He's totally saved John Harbaugh for one thing. But I think I've talked about narratives a lot and how much they can mean to some of these more arbitrary categories. He has had the most meteoric rise to superstardom of anyone. I think that's going to be duly recognized this year. He's the MVP.
Yeah. All right, Tim, who do you have in your first spot? We can kind of guess.
Yeah, I think it's pretty apparent. So to lead up to this, obviously, I'm going to have Russell Wilson in my number one spot. And like I talked about before, it's all about schedule. And I just think personally that Lamar Jackson has not performed as well individually as Russell Wilson. And as a quarterback, when you look at like individual statistics, you look at stuff like passer rating. And currently Lamar Jackson is at a great 106.3, which is phenomenal for a quarterback, especially at this point. And, it doesn't really get much better than that. But Russell Wilson has just been better overall, I personally think. And against a tougher schedule, he currently has a rating of 112.1. Obviously, he has probably the best touchdown to interception ratio with 24-3. His passing yards, 2,937. He's just been really effective at his job, and he's just been better against really tough defenses, and that's why I have to give Russell Wilson the nod.
So this was really close for me. I debated all day whether to put Lamar Jackson at 1 or Russell Wilson at 1. I did just have to go with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson at 1. Again, see, I've been tossing him back and forth all day. There's just something so explosive about how Lamar Jackson plays. He's enigmatic. He is fun to watch. He's really creative. He's 7th in touchdown passes. He's 11th total in the league in rushing. There's no other quarterback in the top 30. He's just such an explosive player. He's so fun to watch.
I think the best thing to say about Lamar Jackson is Jalen Ramsey tweeted to Michael Vick, "Hey, Mike, how would you stop someone like yourself?" That's the perception that players have of him now.
Right, that he could be, and probably already is in a lot of their eyes, the next Michael Vick, which is a really impressive title to hold. And this is just his second season. I mean, there's so much more. He can get so much better. That is why Lamar Jackson is up second in Tim's list, first in Will and I's list. So that, he is very good right now. So we're going to move on to our NFL coaching hot seat. So we're each going to present 2 coaches really quick and just kind of talk through why they're on the hot seat. Will, your first coach?
I really wish I could have like some wild hot take no one's expecting, but
I feel like we're all going the same place.
I'm going to go with
a couple of
Jason
these.
Garrett first. He's coached for 147 games now, 83-64. That's a pretty good win-loss record. But if you look at the playoffs, 2 for 3. So he's only even made it 5 times. Even less than that. He's not doing a terrible job. But at a certain point, with the pieces they have, with Dak Prescott having a good year, Ezekiel Elliott, a great O-line, and even an improved defense, you kind of have to wonder why he hasn't done more. And I think Jerry Jones, he's always going to kind of be a little in your face with his opinions without insulting the man on the show, but he pretty much alluded to Jason Garrett kind of having to coach for his job from here on out.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. I had the Crimson Clapper, the Ginger Clapper on my list. Jason Garrett, I think there's something so unimpressive about Jason Garrett, so mediocre about Jason Garrett. 3 division titles, 3 trips to the playoffs, only 2 playoff wins. That could keep you your job if you're the Tennessee Titans head coach or the Houston Texans head coach, but he's the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. You alluded to it. Jerry Jones holds coaches to a higher standard, holds success in a higher echelon. He is more demanding. So Jason Garrett, his seat is red hot right now. He probably needs to make it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too, because that was what I was thinking as you talked. He's in a situation where it's not just like a lot of coaches win 1 playoff game, you're good for another year. He's had long enough to prove that. Unless he makes it to the Super Bowl, or maybe even he might even have to win it at this point, I think Jerry Jones is going to be done.
There's
with
just so much talent. He's done with it. All right, Tim, who do you have on your hot seat?
So I have Jason Garrett on my coolest hot seat, but he definitely is on a hot seat, especially with some comments made earlier today, I believe. Jerry Jones, maybe said it after the Cowboys state.
You know what it is? It was a 13-9 loss to the number 1 defense in the NFL. It's not a bad loss. I think it's just how they lost. The fact that they, tried to kick, they kicked a field goal at the end of the game instead of going for the touchdown.
I'll say it was a very
number 1 defense.
Statistically speaking, New England is the number 1 defense in the
really?
NFL.
This argument you guys have every week aside, I'll be honest with you, Marco. It was a very, very winnable game for the Cowboys.
It was.
It was in bad conditions to be sure, but it was a bad game. Also, there's already rumors about him going to New York. They've already talked about him going to the Giants. There's already a rumor out there the Giants would be interested in Jason Garrett if he hypothetically was released, and he'd be interested too. So whenever you hear that, never bodes well.
I think Jerry Jones is just getting sick of the mediocrity. This is not a 6-5 roster.
It is not even close.
Should not be 6-5 under any circumstance, and under better coaching, they could probably even get to 9-2. Like, I can see them being
they're
9-2 teams.
They're 0-4 in big games this year.
They have better than that.
They have not won a big game.
Personnel wise, they're better than that. And Jason Garrett should be better than that. So I don't see how Jason Garrett really keeps his job, and I've questioned that for a long time. Not even this year, but in previous years.
The silver lining for Garrett, at least, is he's young enough and he's had just enough success that a little team like Browns or Titans or someone will take him on.
Someone will go after him. So this second coach I have on my hot seat is Freddie Kitchens for pretty obvious reasons. Even though the Browns have picked it up a little bit, that again, like you said, this is not a 5-6 roster in Cleveland. This is a team that had playoff, if not Super Bowl aspirations. Were those a bit high? Yes, but this team has a lot more potential than they are showing. Freddie Kitchens is also just not a guy I see for the job.
I think he was a weird hire to begin with. I know when he was interim coach, Baker played amazingly, but you kind of see that a lot. If a team's coach gets fired, you'll see them be like, okay, we're going to get cut too, time to rally up. I think Kitchens was a questionable hire to begin with.
I think what Kitchens really lacks right now is the chemistry to bring this team together. I think what has been really lacking on the offensive end is chemistry between OBJ, Jarvis Landry, and Baker Mayfield, which is important to build. And I just haven't seen them really connect. And I think it comes down to a lot of coaching style that Freddie Kitchens has and how well he's actually coached the team. I think this, like you said, is a team that should be a lot better than 5-6. And when you look at the roster, it's not a 5-6 roster.
Okay, so I've got Freddie Kitchens and Jason Garrett on my hot seats. Are there any other coaches on your hot seats that we haven't mentioned yet?
That's who I had on the hottest seat. I have Freddie Kitchens on my hottest seat.
I also had Kitchens for my second coach. The other thing to point out, too,
wow, we all went with the same two coaches. It's pretty obvious in the league right now who's in trouble.
The other thing you could point out, by the way, with the Kitchens hire is Greg Williams was the defensive coordinator.
Probably should have
very
been the
well
head
regarded.
coach.
Todd Haley, offense coordinator, very well regarded. And they picked a running back.
Well, it's because Todd Haley got fired, and then Freddie Kitchens was promoted, and then promoted again.
It's
so that was
getting hot in the kitchen.
Bad.
Boo. Get out of here.
Tim's on the hot
All right,
seat.
with that, let's move on to the NFL power rankings. Let's move on. So at 10, I've got the Texans. They beat the Colts. They control their destiny in the crowded AFC South. So Texans are looking good right now. The Bills reappear in the power rankings, as Tim would say, by just beating a lot of terrible teams. But hey, they are still 8-3. 8-3 is 8-3. They're probably going to make the playoffs, at least in the wild card spot. 8, I have the Packers. Really tough loss to the 49ers. It's really all about how they can bounce back. They still control their destiny in the NFC North. If not, a wild card spot is still in the cards for the Packers. 7th, I got the Chiefs. They were at an off week. The defense has looked better over the past few weeks, but it's still a huge problem. 6th, I've got the Vikings. Again, they were off this week as well. We'll see how the Vikings can bounce back and finish this last part of the season here. 5, I have the Saints. They narrowly beat the Panthers, but now they have a huge lead in the division, so they have plenty of space to work with. 4, I have the Seahawks, a really impressive defensive victory against the Eagles. Forced 5 turnovers, 4 from Carson Wentz himself, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles. 3, I have the Patriots. It's hard to do this after a loss, and after a loss to a really talented Cowboys team, but I finally have to drop them. There's just a lack of solid performance from the offense. I know they had a lot of injuries. Mohamed Sanu, Philip Dorsett, a lot of guys injured and hurt. The defense is playing amazing, but the offense is really lacking, and I probably wouldn't have dropped them to 3 if not for the performance by the second-place team, the 49ers, manhandling the Packers, and the Packers are a really good team, so the 49ers getting another statement win like they did against the Panthers a few weeks ago. Number 1, have to do the Ravens. I do have to point out, we are recording this on Monday night before Monday Night Football, so this is subject to change if the Ravens somehow lose to the Rams on Monday Night Football. So your guys' thoughts on the power rankings?
So I personally think that this is probably the best power ranking we've had yet. With Marco putting his ego aside and putting the Patriots where they should be, and that's at number 3. I do think the Patriots could be a heck of a lot better. They obviously have an elite defense.
All these top 5 teams have the potential to be the number 1 team if they perform.
But the reason why the Patriots aren't the number 1 team is because their offense has just not been there. They've not been a good offensive team, and they've had to been carried. And there's an interesting stat that I saw that there's been twice that Aaron Rodgers has underperformed, and they've, I believe, lost by 69 to 13 during those times. And then when Tom Brady's underperformed, the defenses have just come together and they've won 17 to 10 and 16 to 10. This defense from the Patriots are really good, but the team is just lagging behind because of the offense.
Yeah.
First, one thing I will say, just for the sake of fairness, sorry, Marco, you talked about the Bills having a terrible schedule. They're AFC East, so they'll play the same schedule as the Patriots. Just saying, their wins are ugly, but they get it done with the same bad schedule as the Patriots, who admittedly do win in a much prettier way. I'd mostly like to talk about the Niners because, wow, I picked them for our pick'ems, but it was a tough pick to make.
I did not see that coming.
Yeah, it was really split.
I thought
in the room.
Win. If I had to guess, I would have guessed 24-23.
Yeah, we each picked either the 49ers or the Packers, but no one really picked that game very confidently. We all assumed it to be a nail-biter and a hair splitter at the top of the NFC. But yeah, none of us saw that coming. So any other thoughts on the power rankings?
Yeah, it's just a good one. Texans are always a weird
they're
weird
tough,
team.
because really, they beat the Colts, who were in the power rankings. So you got
to their credit,
put them in there. They got 8 wins.
To their credit, too, we thought it was going to be a god-awful conference, but there are no tough outs in the AFC South this year. Shout out to Ryan Tannehill for playing some legitimately impressive football. But overall, it's pretty good. I like the Saints being in Seahawks, that 4-5 spot. watch him. I honestly say this is about as solid of a top 5 the NFL's had in a couple years now.
Yeah, I
Just
think
throwing that out there.
any of these 5 teams
Shout
can
out
win.
to Marco.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great top 10. Any of those top 5 teams
Big
can
flex.
probably win the Super Bowl, and there's probably a few other teams if they get their stuff together, the Vikings, the Chiefs, the Packers. There's up to 8 teams that could probably win the Super Bowl
We
right
talk
now.
a lot about like the NBA having so much parity. The NFL's a lot more contested than it's been in recent memory.
Yeah, the Patriots will probably still make it to the Super Bowl though. It's just kind of how it works.
Oh, now with
I
the Bills
honestly
there.
don't see them getting past.
It's tough.
the
It's going to be a
Ravens
tough
in
out
any
here.
way.
Bills Mafia.
We will see. So with that, we're going to move on
Heard it now.
to our weekly pick'ems and welcome Paul Hires and Jared DeHaan to the show. So we're just going to really quick let Paul give us a little rundown of the stats for the weekly pick'ems.
Well, Marco, I don't think you can say anything about the DeHaan curse anymore because
It's
you
tough.
are tied for the same record as Jared now in the NFL at 9-14, 26-27 overall. Shout out to Jared and Will for going 5-0 last week. Jared at 31-22 in fourth. Tim slides down to third at 25-16, just behind Will in second, 31-17, and me up at the top, 35-18. 33-2 for 5 weeks in a row now.
All right, so let's get into those pick'ems. Just a little quick note here. As I did mention earlier, we are recording this on Monday night, so we don't have the official playoff rankings, so I just used the AP rankings for the college football games. So first up, we have number 2 Ohio State at number 10 Michigan, Saturday 11 o'clock on Fox. Jared, what is your pick in that one?
I have Ohio State. I think it's not even going to be close. I think Fields is going to carve up the Michigan defense, and I see Ohio State by winning by more than 2 touchdowns.
All right, Will, who do you have in this matchup?
It's a much more interesting matchup than it would have been even a couple weeks ago because Shea Patterson's comeback really sparked Michigan, but Ohio State's looked about, really, it's tough to pick between them and LSU at the top. I don't think Ohio State's going to have too much trouble with Michigan.
All right, Paul, who do you have in this one?
Yeah, Michigan's looked better. But as I mentioned last week, Ohio State is just dominant. They struggled a little bit last week for the first time this season. But I think they prepare for Michigan a lot more than they prepare for Penn State.
All right, Tim, who do you have in this one?
I think everybody's kind of touched on this. I don't think it's going to be a close game. Don't turn on the TV when this game turns on. It's going to be an Ohio State blowout.
Well, I think this is going to be a lot closer game than it would have been if this was played mid-season, but I do agree with the consensus in this room that Ohio State is the superior team. So we're all going with Ohio State, so do with that information what you will. Gamble on.
Clean sweep curse is looking a little dicey, though.
The
It's looking a
same-
little dicey, but for 5 people all guaranteeing a victory, it is not as high a percentage as it should be.
The fourth clean sweep for Ohio State. They won the first 3. So.
No one has ever picked against Ohio State on this show. We will see come January if anyone ever does. So the second matchup, number 5 Alabama at 15 Auburn, Saturday 2:30 on CBS. Jared, who do you have in this matchup?
Honestly, if you would have asked me a couple weeks ago when Alabama had Tua, I would have thought this would be an Alabama blowout. But now, I'm honestly going to go with Auburn. I think Auburn's going to shock everybody, and I think Auburn's going to pull off the upset.
All right, Will, your thoughts?
A little disappointed because Jared just took what I thought was going to be a pretty hot take. Honestly, we've seen Auburn in the past. I think even last season, beat Alabama randomly, sneak in there, kind of. I believe last year was Georgia's year in the playoffs, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, they did that. They beat him last year. I think Mac Jones, the backup quarterback for Alabama, he's looked pretty good in his limited action, but he's no Tua, and it's a pretty good Tigers team anyway. I'll take Auburn.
All right, Paul.
Yeah, as much as I'd love to take Auburn, I think the last 2 times I picked them, they haven't come through. Mac Jones, really surprisingly impressive. When you're a backup to Tua, you'd probably be pretty good, at least, to be a starter on a different team. But I just don't see Auburn winning this. It is a rivalry game, but I got to go with Alabama.
All right, Tim, who do you have in this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna actually go with Paul on this one. I don't think I just don't see Auburn beating Alabama, and the backup has definitely looked a lot better. I think Najee Harris is going to definitely play a big part in this game because Mac Brown is still fairly young and still getting used to the system. So I still think that Najee Harris is going to probably run over Auburn.
Yeah, so I think people are kind of playing up the narrative that Mac Jones is a backup. He is unexperienced, but he did get a lot of first-team reps against West Carolina. So that's really important to have that. I know it's not a quality opponent, but it's just being in the environment, being in the system in a live game environment. And I think Alabama just has the superior athletes to Auburn and the superior coaching to just overcome that. So I'm going to have to go with Alabama, the Crimson Tide, over Auburn.
You also can't underestimate the fact with Alabama, when your 5-star quarterback goes down,
you have
just
a 4-star quarterback.
You just move to a 4 or 5-star quarterback anyway.
Right. People are saying, oh, it's backup Mac Jones. He's just a sophomore, only one career start, now 2 career starts. He's a 4-star recruit. I mean, this kid can play. He can really play. So now let's move on to our final college football matchup of the day. Number 12, Wisconsin at number 10, Minnesota, Saturday, 2:30 on ABC. That's the game day game, and it is now the de facto Big Ten West championship game. Jared, who do you have in that one?
This one's a big time toss up because these two teams are ranked really close. Wisconsin's only a 2-point favorite at this point. I'm going to go with the Golden Gophers. I don't know what about them is making me want to go with them, but I just have more faith in them than I do the Badgers. So I'm going to go with Minnesota.
All right, Will, who do you have in this matchup?
Once again, DeHaan stealing my thunder there. I sat down this weekend and watched them play Northwestern, which obviously is not. Usually Northwestern's a tough out. They really aren't this year, but I was just really impressed with just seeing what they do against any opponent. I really am starting to believe in Minnesota. Mostly I believe in PJ Fleck, and I'll risk it for Minnesota on this one.
All right, Paul?
Yeah, I am thinking Minnesota's getting better, rowing the boat, as they like to say. But I just can't quite pull the trigger on them. I know they played Penn State very well, but this is a Wisconsin team who is looking very well here at the end of the season. I'm going with the Badgers.
All right, Tim?
Yeah, I'm going to have to side with Ball again. I guess we're going with the split on this one. I kind of had to look at the common opponents, and when you look at the Iowa win for Wisconsin compared to Iowa beating Minnesota, and when you see that Jonathan Taylor is on the other side, I really got to say that I've got to go with Wisconsin. I think that they're going to obviously stick to their power run game, and I think they're going to run over Minnesota. It's going to be a close game, and you're going to want to turn on the TV for this one.
So I wholeheartedly agree with Tim and Paul once again. It's hard to go against Jonathan Taylor in Wisconsin the way they've been playing the past few weeks. Minnesota is looking really strong. Obviously, this is the best they've been in a really, really long time. But I have to go with Wisconsin. They just seem like the better team. They're going to ruin game day. They're going to ruin the Badgers' really solid season. They're going to ruin their chance to go to the Big Ten championship game. So I have to go with Wisconsin on that one. So now we're going to move into our NFL pick'ems. San Francisco 49ers at the Baltimore Ravens Sunday at noon on Fox. This is one of the bigger NFL matchups of the season. So Jared, who do you have in this one?
Honestly, last week I never said anything about why I was picking him, and I went 4-0. So with that being said, I'm going to go with Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers.
All right. Well, with that, Will, what are your thoughts?
First of all, who would have thought that this game would be such an important game? Like, if you looked at the start of the season, you're like, oh, Niners, Ravens.
Well, there's a reason why this
whatever.
game is at noon. I'm pretty sure it's probably, by the time this episode comes out, it'll have been flexed to a primetime
This could be a primetime, yeah. Not a game of huge consequence, but boy,
a fun game to watch.
No game really has given me more of a headache to pick this week than this one. This might be the toughest one I've had to pick in a while. So I'm just going to go with the team that has who I think is the best player. As much as the 49ers always screw me over on these pick'ems, I'll take the Ravens because of Lamar.
All right, Paul.
Yeah, this is a rematch of Super Bowl 47, if you guys remember that one.
That's the one where the lights went out.
And more importantly, it had a little controversy. One of the early questionable calls that kind of led to the pass interference rules.
Yeah.
Ravens won that one. I think they're going to win again this one. They do have 2 losses, but I really think this team is getting better with each week. We've mentioned it in the power rankings, and just I mean, Lamar Jackson at the top of two of your guys' MVPs. I mean, just undoubtedly this team is getting better with every week, and I think they're going to beat the 49ers.
All right, Tim, who do you have in this matchup?
Yeah, I've got to go with the Ravens in this. I think when you look at the offensive and defensive matchups, obviously very high-powered offense for the Ravens and a very high-powered defense for the 49ers. But I just don't see the 49ers offense being able to do much against this defense because the offense for the 49ers is just so subpar compared to the Ravens offense. And I've got to go with the Ravens. I think the Ravens offense are going to get just as many drives as they need down the field and get the points that they need to win the game.
All right, so I'm also going to have to go with the Ravens. You talked about the rematch from the Super Bowl, but overall, I think the Ravens, we talked about this, they've just been getting so much better. And while the 49ers, they have been very consistent on defense, I think the Ravens are better on both sides of the ball. They have the better quarterback. I think they have the better coach, at least right now. Kyle Shanahan is tremendous, but John Harbaugh has the experience factor. So I have to go with Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. So our final matchup in the Pick'ems, the Minnesota Vikings at the Seattle Seahawks, Monday, 7:15 on ESPN. Jared, who do you have in this matchup?
It's really hard to pick for Kirk Cousins. I don't know why. I just don't want to pick the Vikings.
He beat
this
the
week.
Cowboys.
They're the Cowboys.
Wow.
You guys just said Garrett was on the hot seat. So with that being said, let's go with Seattle.
So confident. All right, Will, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to take Seattle. The Vikings have been a super hot and cold team. If you told me they went out there and just dominated Seattle, honestly wouldn't be shocked. But again, Russell Wilson's having a next level season. Vikings have been just weird and inconsistent all year. I'll take a sure thing. I'll take Seattle.
All right, Paul.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I mean, Minnesota's been all over the place this season. They've beaten some teams that they probably shouldn't have. And I mean, really, 3-3 on the road is not a great record. Against a team like this, I think Seattle gets the win at home.
All right, Tim.
I think everybody else has pretty much said what I was going to say. I just don't see Minnesota's offense behind Kirk Cousins being able to do as much. And obviously, Russell Wilson has been having a very high caliber season. He's been obviously in the MVP consideration all season. I just don't see the Minnesota defense being able to stop the Seahawks offense as much as the Seahawks defense will Minnesota's offense.
All right, so everybody watch out. It's another clean sweep in a close matchup. We just all think that Seattle's just a little bit better on all sides of the ball. Obviously, when you look at the coach and the quarterback, Seattle, big advantage there. Wilson over Cousins, probably Carroll over Zimmer as well. So with that, that's the end of our pick'ems. Again, another clean sweep, so watch out. Put money on Minnesota if you want to bet against us, which is probably a pretty good idea. So before we go, though, we have a new segment to introduce. It's the hot take of the week, and this week, it's Mr. Jared DeHaan. Jared, what is your hot take?
So my hot take this week is that the Michigan State Spartans will not make the NCAA tournament Sweet 16.
Care to elaborate at all?
Well, if anybody didn't tune in tonight, Michigan State just lost to a Virginia Tech team. Virginia Tech only returned 4 players from last year's team with a new coach, and they weren't really expected to do much this year. And Michigan State pretty much came out and laid an egg the entire game until they were down by like 9 points, about 6 minutes left. And they came back and barely lost it by 4, but still, I just have no faith in them. And the 3 teams they've played this year from the Power 5 conferences, they've lost to Kentucky, they've lost to Virginia Tech, and they barely beat Seton Hall. I know Seton Hall is a good team, but still, from what we were expecting at the beginning of the year, they were expected to at least win 2, if not all, these 3 games. So right now, I just don't have much faith in them.
All right, so that's a pretty hot take. Anybody have any reactions to that? Will?
I think a major X factor could be Joey Hauser from Marquette. He was a transfer. His transfer is currently being blocked by the NC2A. I think one of the things Michigan State struggled with is Nick McCade. He was a sharpshooting guard for them last year. He hit some big shots in the tournament. I think they've really missed having a shooting presence like that. The Hauser brothers, both 3-point snipers. if they can get Joey Hauser successfully transferred in, I think that they're going to do a lot better. But I'd honestly agree with his take as of right now.
All right, so that's it for the hot take and for the episode. Thank you so much for joining us on episode 11 of the Unqualified Opinions podcast. For Marco Yerkovich, Paul Hires, Tim Seipel, Will Byerman, and Mr. Jared DeHaan. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below.
Right button.
Please do.
Hit
the bell, hit
Happy
everything.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's coming out before Thanksgiving,
I'm
hopefully.
thankful for all you boys and all you listeners.
All right, thank
Don't
you
make
guys
me
so
cry.
much, and we will see you guys next time.